Have you ever asked yourself why, despite all your effort, all your striving, all the countless hours spent trying, success still feels distant, like a shadow just beyond your reach? Why do some rise effortlessly while others stumble, trapped in cycles of frustration, their ambitions quietly eroded by indecision and distraction? Napoleon Hill discovered that this question is not merely philosophical, it is practical, urgent, and unavoidable. It demands an answer because the truth is that success is not something you chase externally. It is not something that the world grants you as a reward for activity or for effort measured in hours or accolades. Success, Hill insisted, is an internal conquest long before it manifests externally. It begins within in the unseen corridors of the mind, in the structure of thought, the discipline of emotion, the alignment of purpose. And until you understand this, until you live as though success is already your identity, every attempt you make will feel incomplete, like trying to sculpt marble with blunt tools. The first law of this internal conquest is definiteness of purpose. Without it, the mind flails, energy scatters, and desire becomes a weak ember that dies in the wind. Hill argued that definiteness of purpose is not a vague longing or an abstract dream. It is a burning statement of intent that dominates thought, shapes decision, and dictates action. It is precise, it is measurable, and it demands total commitment. Consider this: a ship without a course drifts endlessly, and no amount of effort at the oars will save it from the currents of circumstance. Your mind, untethered from definite purpose, behaves the same way. It is buffeted by fear, hesitation, and indecision. It listens to the loudest voices around it, the opinions of others, the distractions of modern life, instead of its own internal compass. Until you define with absolute clarity what you intend to achieve, every action you take is merely rehearsal, never execution, never reality. Burning desire is the fuel for this internal engine. Desire that is wishful, tentative, or polite is ineffective. Desire must be visceral, consuming, unrelenting. Hill observed that desire alone does not produce success. Desire without persistence, without alignment, without mental authority becomes frustration. But when desire is married to a definiteness of purpose, it transforms into force. Force that bends circumstance, attracts resources, and commands the subconscious. And here lies the first paradox. The very thing you think must be earned externally, opportunity, wealth, recognition, is drawn to the intensity of your internal desire. The universe, Hill said, responds to those who act as if what they desire is already inevitable, because the mind itself begins to behave accordingly. When desire is weak, the mind vacillates, hesitation dominates, and energy dissipates into distraction. When desire is strong, the mind focuses, disciplines, and aligns every thought, word, and action to that singular aim. Faith is the invisible architecture of this internal conquest, not blind optimism, not hope that circumstances will favor you, but a disciplined belief in your own ability to act in accordance with purpose. Faith amplifies desire. It allows the mind to internalize possibility. Hill demonstrated that people who cultivate faith see solutions where others see obstacles, maintain focus when the world questions them, and persevere when all external signs suggest impossibility. Faith is reinforced through repetition, through deliberate autosuggestion, the consistent intentional communication to yourself that you are capable, that you are committed, that your purpose is non-negotiable. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between imagination and reality. It obeys instruction. Speak to it with certainty, and your behavior follows. Speak to it with doubt, and hesitation manifests as failure. Faith is the command voice that guides the mind. Unseen, unshakable, and relentlessly persistent. Persistence itself is not effort applied erratically or with bursts of inspiration. Persistence is endurance under strain, repetition in the absence of immediate reward, and the refusal to be derailed by fear, doubt, or temporary failure. Hill observed that those who fail often do so not because they lack ability, but because they stop at the first signs of difficulty, because they wait for encouragement instead of enforcing discipline internally. True persistence is unemotional. It is structural. It does not seek validation. It does not wait for results to justify effort. It simply continues because the identity that has been internalized demands continuity. This is a crucial point. Success is not an external event. It is a state of being. You cannot act inconsistently and expect external achievement to appear. You cannot try and hope to become. You must live in accordance with the success you intend to manifest, consistently, deliberately, and without compromise. Self-discipline is the tool through which persistence is executed. Without self-discipline, effort is inconsistent, desire is chaotic, and purpose is meaningless. Discipline organizes the mind, channels energy, and enforces standards when motivation wanes. Hill observed that the disciplined individual does not wait to feel like acting. The disciplined mind acts because it has committed to an internal law of conduct. Emotion may fluctuate. The world may threaten. Obstacles may appear, but the disciplined mind obeys itself first, aligning thought, word, and deed with purpose. This is the point where internal conquest solidifies. External achievement follows, but it is no longer the measure of success. Success is measured by internal alignment, by integrity of thought, by relentless obedience to the chosen purpose. Fear is the final adversary of this internal conquest, not merely fear of failure, but fear of exposure, fear of responsibility, fear of realizing your own potential. Hill described fear as the silent saboteur, working beneath consciousness, shaping hesitation, delaying decisions, and undermining action. Mastery over fear is achieved not by denial, but by understanding its source, naming it, and acting despite its presence. The courageous mind does not feel no fear. It acts because fear cannot dominate its decision. This is where imagination, properly disciplined, becomes a tool. The imagination is not for fantasies, but for rehearsal, visualizing action under stress, solutions under pressure, and persistence through adversity. By directing imagination deliberately, the mind prepares for challenges before they manifest, and the subconscious adapts to see opportunity rather than obstacle. Decision is the crucible in which all internal conquest is tested. Indecision fractures energy, dissipates focus, and invites drift. Hill emphasized that decisive action based on purpose and informed by disciplined imagination catalyze internal transformation. Decision transforms potential into identity. Every act consistent with this decision reinforces the subconscious expectation of success. Every hesitation weakens it. This is why so many fail despite intelligence, skill, or effort. They postpone decision. They negotiate internally. They live in the tension between trying and being. Success does not dwell in trying. Success dwells in the state of being, in the identity that has been internalized and expressed through action consistently, regardless of circumstance. Invisible mental forces are the final mechanism of internal conquest. These forces, the alignment of thought, belief, desire, and action, shape perception, attract resources, and generate opportunity. They are not mystical. They are psychological and practical. They operate silently, obeying the consistent instructions of the mind. When internal alignment is maintained, external results inevitably follow. When internal alignment is neglected, effort dissipates, results stagnate, and ambition decays. Hill's teachings illuminate this principle. Mastery of self precedes mastery of circumstance. Control of the mind dictates the flow of destiny. Without internal conquest, external success is a fragile illusion. And so, the first question you must confront is not, how can I achieve success, but who must I become to embody success? Every act of effort, every decision, every thought, every deliberate repetition, every confrontation with fear are. Every moment of disciplined action is a step toward inhabiting that identity. Until you internalize success, until you live it as reality, every external attempt remains a rehearsal. Trying without being is a loop. It is superficial motion. It is wasted effort. Napoleon Hill's life and study reveal a truth that cannot be negotiated. External achievement is the reflection of internal authority. The mind that governs itself commands reality. The mind that submits to doubt, hesitation, or fear experiences delay, struggle, and incompletion. So I ask you again, with the weight of all that has been observed, studied, and lived by those who have achieved, are you willing to cease trying in the way you have always tried, to abandon the habits that keep effort separate from identity, and to begin living as though success is your current state? Are you willing to impose clarity where you have tolerated ambiguity, purpose where you have tolerated drift, and discipline where you have tolerated indulgence? Are you willing to command your mind, harness your desire, cultivate your faith, master your fears, and enforce your decisions so thoroughly that success is no longer an aspiration, but a reflection of the person you have become? If your answer is yes, then the journey begins here, within the mind, in the hidden structures of thought and emotion, in the unseen forces that shape destiny. From this point forward, your work is not to chase results, but to inhabit them, to live as success, to breathe its principles, to execute its laws, to persist relentlessly until internal conquest manifests externally, inevitably, without negotiation, without hesitation, without compromise. The path is exacting, demanding, and unforgiving, but it is the only path that guarantees transformation. For Napoleon Hill proved repeatedly, conclusively, that those who live as success, rather than try to achieve it, do not merely accumulate wealth, influence, or recognition. They become the architects of their destiny, the masters of their own mind, and the embodiment of the very laws that govern achievement in every realm of life. Once you have committed to living as success rather than merely trying to achieve it, the mind begins a subtle yet profound transformation. This transformation is invisible at first, almost imperceptible. It does not arrive with fanfare or drama. It arrives quietly in the way your attention sharpens, in the way distractions lose their grip, in the way your internal dialogue shifts from negotiation to command. Napoleon Hill observed that the beginning of true internal mastery is marked not by accomplishment, but by awareness. The awareness that every thought, every belief, every repetition of emotion shapes the architecture of destiny long before action produces external evidence. Most people fail to perceive this, and so they labor tirelessly, attempting to act themselves into achievement while their inner world remains fragmented, inconsistent, and unaligned. The consequence is exhaustion without progress, effort without result, and frustration disguised as ambition. The first law that must be deeply internalized at this stage is persistence. Persistence is often misunderstood. Many imagine it as heroic struggle, dramatic defiance, or bursts of effort in moments of inspiration, but true persistence is quieter, less glamorous, and infinitely more powerful. It is the refusal to yield to internal compromise. It is continuing when recognition is absent. It is acting with unwavering consistency even when progress is invisible, when the world appears indifferent, and when external validation offers no reward. Hill emphasized that the mind cannot distinguish between action that is performed for approval and action that is performed out of identity. Only the latter shapes destiny. If you persist solely to achieve recognition, to feel competent, to satisfy ambition, your effort will be reactive, incomplete, and temporary. Persistence must emerge from the internal law that defines who you are, not from the fluctuating emotions of circumstance. This is where faith interlocks with persistence. Faith is not comfort. Faith is not hope. Faith is the internal certainty that your actions are meaningful and that your purpose is non-negotiable regardless of visible evidence. The subconscious mind cannot operate on hope, it operates on certainty. Hill described faith as the force that aligns the subconscious to your conscious we. It does not remove obstacles, but it enables the mind to navigate them strategically rather than chaotically. When you act with faith, you communicate to your subconscious that resistance is expected but irrelevant. Fear may rise, doubt may whisper, but persistence reinforced by faith continues to act. This is where internal conquest solidifies. The mind recognizes pattern, structure, and authority and begins to organize itself around the principle of inevitability rather than contingency. Burning desire becomes the engine at this stage. Desire that is faint, hesitant, or polite will not endure the silent test of daily persistence. Desire must be visceral. It must dominate thought, dictate action, and reinforce identity continuously. Hill observed that desire alone does not create success. It must be integrated with faith, persistence, and definite purpose. Only then does it become the energy that compels action, even in moments of fatigue, frustration, or fear. Desire must be conditioned through repetition, visualization, and disciplined imagination. The subconscious mind, when repeatedly instructed, begins to align behavior with this intense longing, producing solutions, attracting opportunities, and orchestrating circumstances that appear coincidental to the casual observer, but are inevitable in the trained mind. At this stage, self-discipline becomes both the tool and the law. Discipline is no longer merely a practice, it is identity. It enforces persistence when motion wavers. It directs imagination when distraction tempts. It commands the mind when doubt intrudes. Hill emphasized that self-discipline is the bridge between internal conception and external manifestation. Without it, desire flares briefly and fades. Without it, persistence falters in the absence of applause. Without it, faith cannot anchor the subconscious. Discipline organizes the intangible components of thought, belief, and emotion into a coherent force that acts without hesitation or negotiation. It is less about willpower and more about structural alignment of identity. Fear, however, remains a constant adversary. Not fear of failure in the obvious sense, but fear of exposure, fear of responsibility, fear of permanence. Fear at this stage is subtler and more cunning. It disguises itself as reason, practicality, or patience. It whispers that effort is wasted, that sacrifice is unnecessary, that the current moment is insufficient for action. Hill recognized that fear of exposure is more destructive than fear of failure because it attacks the self-concept directly. Mastery over fear at this point is not denial. It is recognition, confrontation, and persistent action despite its presence. The disciplined mind understands that fear is inevitable, but obedience to purpose is non-negotiable. Imagination must now be rigorously controlled. Most people imagine outcomes, fantasize about results, and rehearse failure unconsciously. This misaligned imagination trains the subconscious to expect distraction, resistance, and delay. Hill insisted that imagination be used deliberately, visualizing not merely the achievement, but the process, the enduring of challenge, the sustained action, the repetition that makes persistence effortless. Through disciplined imagination, the subconscious is programmed to operate under pressure, to endure monotony, and to solve problems proactively rather than reactively. The mind, when trained in this way, begins to act with foresight, stability, and internal authority. Decision-making consolidates energy at this stage. Indecision fractures focus. Hesitation dissipates effort. Every moment spent negotiating internally with doubt or convenience is energy lost from execution. Hill observed that the decisive individual achieves more in a week than the tentative individual achieves in a year, precisely because energy is concentrated, not scattered. Decision is not impulsive. It is informed, aligned, and irreversible in its intent. It communicates to the subconscious mind that deviation is unacceptable, that persistence is mandatory, and that identity is fixed. Every repeated decision reinforces identity, and every reinforced identity strengthens the alignment between mind and destiny. Persistence and discipline must now be executed under emotional duress. Motivation will ebb. Novelty will fade. External recognition may remain absent for months, years, even decades. Hill noted that the internal law of success is invisible, slow and imperceptible. Progress is measured not by applause but by alignment. It is built quietly, invisibly, consistently. The untrained mind interprets absence of immediate results as failure. The trained mind interprets absence of reward as opportunity to reinforce identity. This distinction is subtle but decisive. Success is not reactive to outcome. It is proactive in alignment. As these internal forces consolidate, external opportunity begins to manifest. But it does so subtly. Systems respond to consistency. People respond to reliability. Circumstances respond to preparation. Hill insisted that external achievement is a reflection of internal order. Without internal mastery, external results are erratic. With internal mastery, external opportunity flows predictably. The mind has become a signal, a force, a law unto itself, attracting circumstance that is coherent with its persistent, disciplined, and faithful direction. By now, self-respect emerges naturally. Every commitment to disciplined thought, to deliberate action, to faithful persistence strengthens internal trust. Hill observed that most people violate this trust daily, tolerating deviation, procrastination, and compromise, and then wonder why results remain elusive. The refined mind respects its own word. It obeys its own law. This self-respect is the foundation of sustainable achievement. It is internal sovereignty. Once established, it reduces internal conflict, increases clarity, and permits effort. Less focus on purposeful action. Fear, temptation, distraction all persist, but the mind no longer negotiates. The subconscious has internalized the command: act as though success is identity, persist as though the world is irrelevant, endure as though reward is inevitable. This internalization is the point at which external manifestation becomes inevitable. Hill consistently demonstrated that those who mastered this internal law encountered opportunity, wealth, influence, and recognition as a natural extension of their disciplined identity, not as gifts, not as luck, not as chance, as mechanical consequences of internal alignment. At this juncture, imagination, faith, persistence, and discipline are no longer tools. They are instinctive behaviors. Decision is not delayed. Action is not hesitant. The mind no longer tries. It acts in accordance with identity. Trying implies doubt. Being removes doubt. Hill taught that the moment you embody success internally, external results follow naturally, inevitably, without negotiation. Success is no longer an aspiration. It is a state of being. And so the second question arises: can you accept that all the effort you have expended trying is wasted if your mind remains unaligned? Can you see that external work, no matter how diligent, cannot replace internal sovereignty? The person who understands this stops trying in the superficial sense and begins living as success in every thought, every emotion, every decision, every action. Living as success is not aspirational. It is structural. It is identity. It is obedience to the invisible laws that govern the mind and therefore reality. If you can internalize this, if you can persist without immediate reward, if you can act decisively in the presence of fear, if you can cultivate burning desire, discipline, and faith as internal laws rather than external hopes, then your external life will inevitably align. This is the secret Napoleon Hill revealed. Success is a state to be inhabited, not a prize to be won. Until you inhabit it, all external measures are mere illusions, temporary and inconsistent. Once you inhabit it, all external measures become inevitable, predictable, and proportional to your internal mastery. By the time the mind reaches this level of refinement, imagination becomes its most critical instrument, and yet also its most dangerous. Most people use imagination to escape, to fantasize, to dwell in possibility without consequence. Hill taught that such unstructured imagination is the greatest saboteur of success because it trains the subconscious to anticipate failure, distraction, and delay. The disciplined mind, however, uses imagination as a rehearsal chamber. Every scenario, every challenge, every obstacle is imagined deliberately, with focus, with strategy, with the full understanding that the subconscious cannot distinguish rehearsal from reality. The subconscious accepts the repeated imagery of disciplined action as inevitable behavior. It learns to operate under pressure, to adapt without panic, to persist without wavering, and to recognize opportunity before others perceive it. In this way, imagination becomes not an indulgence but a weapon, a precise instrument for aligning the invisible mental forces that govern outcome with the visible reality of action. At this stage, decision transforms from occasional necessity into an internal law. Indecision is no longer merely inconvenient, it is corrosive. Each hesitation leaks energy, diminishes focus, and fractures identity. Hill observed that the decisive mind achieves more in a week than the tentative mind achieves in a year. Decision is not about being impulsive, it is about clarity of purpose, informed judgment, and unwavering commitment. Once a decision is made internally, it becomes instruction to the subconscious, a directive that aligns thought, emotion, and action into a single coherent force. Every repeated decision reinforces this alignment. Every decisive act trains the mind to recognize the non-negotiable truth. Internal authority precedes external manifestation. Persistence now evolves beyond mere endurance. It becomes a constant structural in-see. Stance on alignment, a refusal to betray identity under any circumstance. The mind is tested not in the moments of inspiration, but in the moments of fatigue, boredom, frustration, and isolation. These are the moments where most people surrender, not because the work is too difficult, but because internal cohesion has not been established. Hill made it clear the most reliable predictor of eventual achievement is not talent, intelligence, or opportunity, but the ability to persist through the silent, unobserved trials of ordinary life. Persistence is the enforcement arm of identity. Without it, desire fades, faith wavers, and the subconscious loses instruction. With it, even in the absence of recognition, reward, or acknowledgement, the mind continues to shape destiny. Faith remains the invisible architecture supporting all action. By now, faith is no longer belief alone, it is certainty reinforced through repeated demonstration to the subconscious. It is the internal knowledge that action in alignment with purpose is inherently productive, regardless of immediate results. This certainty transforms the mind into a predictive mechanism, anticipating outcomes according to internal law rather than external circumstance. Hill emphasized that faith is the element that converts desire into reality because it organizes the subconscious to act without hesitation, without distraction, and without compromise. Faith, reinforced by persistence and imagination, ensures that internal actio, N, is consistent, deliberate, and self-reinforcing. Fear continues its subtle manipulations. It is no longer only fear of failure. It becomes fear of exposure, of responsibility, of permanence. It masquerades as reason, practicality, or patience, attempting to convince the mind that compromise is acceptable, that deviation will be inconsequential, or that inaction is harmless. Hill identified fear as the greatest silent adversary because it undermines internal cohesion without alerting conscious awareness. Mastery over fear is not denial but confrontation. The deliberate action in the presence of fear, the repetition of discipline in moments when hesitation tempts, the reinforcement of identity despite internal tremors. The courageous mind does not feel no fear, it acts because fear cannot dictate the law of internal order. At this phase, the invisible, mental forces that Hill described begin to manifest with increasing subtlety and reality. These forces, alignment of thought, belief, desire, decision, persistence, and disciplined imagination, interact with external circumstance in ways that appear coincidental, but are, in fact, the mechanical result of internal order. Opportunity begins to respond predictably, relationships shift toward alignment, systems recognize consistency, and challenges become navigable rather than paralyzing. This is not luck or fortune, it is law. The subconscious, trained and disciplined, organizes perception, behavior, and environment to reflect the internal state. Success is no longer a reaction to circumstance, it is the inevitable consequence of internal mastery. Self-discipline by now operates as identity itself. It is less an effortful act and more a structural attribute of being. The mind, conditioned by repetition, persistence, and deliberate instruction, enforces alignment automatically. Motivation is no longer required because the mind's identity has been restructured. It acts because non-action is incompatible with the person it has become. Hill observed that most people fail because they rely on emotion to guide action. The disciplined mind acts independently of fluctuating emotion. This is the essence of living a success rather than attempting it. Trying implies negotiation, hesitation, and dependency. Being implies authority, coherence, and inevitability. Imagination must now be continuously calibrated. It is used not to invent fantasy, but to anticipate challenges, rehearse solutions, and visualize sustained performance. The subconscious mind accepts repeated patterns of visualization as instruction. Every problem imagined with strategy is solved more effectively in reality. Every adversity rehearsed internally is endured externally without hesitation. Every complexity anticipated in the mind becomes manageable when it appears in the external environment. Hill's studies revealed that those who mastered imagination in this disciplined way moved through obstacles that paralyzed others, seeing them as mere steps in the structure of success rather than threats to it. Decision-making is reinforced by continuous action. Each choice executed builds momentum, each act of obedience to purpose reinforces identity, and each victory over hesitation consolidates internal law. The mind begins to operate with fluidity under pressure because identity has become the governing authority. External recognition, reward, or applause is irrelevant. The mind acts consistently because it is consistent. Persistence no longer requires effort in the conventional sense. It becomes a natural extension of being. Fear, desire, and doubt are observed and managed, not reacted to. By this stage, self-respect has emerged naturally from internal consistency. Every promise to oneself kept, every fear faced, every hesitation overcome reinforces trust in identity. Hill observed that self-respect is the silent currency of achievement. Without it, no external success can be sustained. With it, external success becomes inevitable. Self-respect stabilizes the mind, reduces internal friction, and frees energy for strategic action rather than negotiation with oneself. Internal trust allows the mind to operate with precision, confidence, and resilience. External opportunity begins to reflect internal mastery. Systems respond to consistency. People gravitate toward reliability. Circumstance aligns with internal law. Hill emphasized that external success is the mirror of internal order. Without alignment, external results are sporadic, unpredictable, and temporary. With alignment, results are consistent, proportional, and inevitable. The invisible mental forces orchestrated by persistence, imagination, faith, decision, and discipline become visible as measurable achievement. At this point, the mind has internalized success as identity. Trying is obsolete. Effort is automatic. Action flows without hesitation. Hill insisted that this is the stage where transformation is irreversible. The internal conquest has been achieved. Success is no longer a distant goal. It is a state inhabited moment to moment. The subconscious, trained through repetition, obedience, and deliberate visualization, continues to enforce alignment without conscious effort. External recognition, reward, and opportunity now follow naturally as the predictable result of internal mastery. The final realization at this stage is profound. External achievement is temporary and superficial unless sustained by continuous internal alignment. Discipline, persistence, imagination, decision, and faith must remain active, continually refined and consciously reinforced. The mind, once trained to act in accordance with identity, must continue to enforce internal law even when results are abundant. Hill warned that early success can be deceptive, inviting complacency and relaxation, undermining the very laws that produced it. The disciplined mind recognizes that alignment is perpetual, refinement is constant, and obedience to internal law is non-negotiable. Thus, the mind now exists in a state where every action, thought, and decision is informed by purpose, desire, and disciplined imagination. Fear is managed. Doubt is neutralized. Persistence is structural. Faith is unwavering. The invisible mental forces that govern destiny have been harnessed and aligned with identity. External opportunity flows predictably. Challenges are navigable. Success is not a distant goal. It is inhabited continuously, reflected in every decision, every action, every interaction. And here, at the threshold of full internal mastery, the mind asks a deeper question. Are you prepared to maintain this level of alignment without external validation, without dramatic events, without constant reassurance? Can you sustain identity over desire for comfort, over fear of judgment, over the temptation to compromise? Hill's philosophy is unyielding. The mind that refuses compromise, that enforces alignment, that persists under all conditions, is the mind that commands destiny. All else is surrender, all else is illusion. By the time the mind reaches this stage, the internal architecture of success has been largely constructed, yet mastery requires continuous reinforcement. Napoleon Hill emphasized that the human mind is never static. It is a living system of thought, emotion, and belief, and as such, it must be continuously calibrated to remain in alignment with purpose. The moment attention drifts, desire softens, or fear sneaks through, the internal structure begins to weaken, and the invisible mental forces that once orchestrated circumstance begin to lose coherence. The refined mind understands that mastery is not a final achievement, but a daily process, a relentless rehearsal of alignment, persistence, and disciplined imagination. Emotional regulation becomes the primary battlefield at this stage. Most people assume success is about intelligence, skill, or external resources. Hill demonstrated that the greatest predictor of sustainable achievement is the ability to control emotion under all circumstances. The mind that is mastered can face disappointment without despair, criticism without defensiveness, and failure without surrender. Emotions are observed as instruments, not commands. The internal law dictates that desire, faith, and purpose must be reinforced even when the heart quivers or the world resists. Emotional mastery is not suppression, it is direction. It is the ability to harness fear, impatience, doubt, and frustration into energy for persistence, problem-solving, and disciplined action. Without it, even the most structured mind falters. Fear at this stage is no longer obvious. It is subtle, insidious, infiltrating as doubt, procrastination, or rationalization. Hill noted that fear is the shadow companion of desire. The stronger the desire, the more fear seeks to sabotage. Mastery over fear is not the absence of its presence, but the imposition of will upon it. Fear is acknowledged, died, and then acted against deliberately. The disciplined mind does not wait for courage to appear. Courage is manufactured through repetition, action in the presence of fear, thought aligned to purpose despite hesitation, and decision enforced despite doubt. This is the crucible where ordinary ambition is transformed into unshakable internal authority. The mind that conquers fear becomes impervious to circumstance, unshakable by criticism, and impervious to distraction. Self-discipline becomes the invisible backbone of all action. By this stage, discipline is no longer externally enforced or even consciously applied. It has become structural, woven into identity. Every decision, every habit, every reaction is automatically filtered through the lens of purpose. Hill argued that most failures occur not because people are weak in moments of difficulty, but because they have never internalized discipline. External circumstances test all minds, but only those with internalized law act consistently under pressure. Discipline enforces alignment, ensures persistence, and neutralizes distraction. It is the mechanism through which the mind transforms desire into achievement. Imagination must now operate at its highest level of precision. The mind can no longer allow free-floating daydreams, nor can it indulge fantasies disconnected from reality. Imagination becomes rehearsal, simulation, and problem-solving. Every challenge is visualized in advance. Every potential obstacle is imagi. Ned and overcome mentally before it appears externally. The subconscious, trained through disciplined repetition, begins to anticipate solutions rather than problems. Hill noted that those who master imagination in this way appear to act with foresight, calm under pressure, and ready for challenges that paralyze others. This is the point at which internal mastery begins to shape external reality predictably. Opportunity follows preparation because preparation has been internalized in the mind long before it manifests in circumstance. Decision at this juncture is enforced with finality. The mind no longer hesitates. Each choice reflects purpose and identity. Indecision is no longer tolerated internally. Every moment of hesitation is corrected immediately. Every wavering thought disciplined, every emotional intrusion observed and redirected. Hill emphasized that indecision is a corrosive force because it dissipates energy and weakens identity. The decisive mind, by contrast, concentrates energy, focuses attention, and commands the subconscious to act consistently. Decisions become law, shaping perception, behavior, and ultimately external results. The mind that can decide with precision under pressure governs not only itself, but also the reality it encounters. Persistence now evolves into seamless endurance. Early persistence is effortful. It resists external opposition. Advanced persistence, however, is effortless because it is no longer motivated by reward, recognition, or even desire for achievement. It is motivated by identity. The person who has internalized success acts because inaction would violate who they are. Hill observed that those who sustain persistence in the absence of reward achieve what others consider extraordinary. The mind conditioned in this way navigates obstacles, withstands setbacks, and continues executing alignment without emotional fatigue. Persistence becomes instinctive, structural, and unstoppable. Faith remains the guiding architecture. By now, faith is certainty reinforced through repeated demonstration to the subconscious. The mind no longer doubts that action aligned with purpose produces result. Hill's studies revealed that faith is the mechanism through which desire and imagination are converted into action that consistently manifests as reality. The subconscious responds to faith as to law. It no longer negotiates, it obeys. Faith, combined with disciplined imagination, persistence, decision, and self-control, transforms the invisible mental forces into visible outcomes. At this stage, self-respect becomes profound. Every promise to oneself kept, every hesitation resisted, every fear confronted, every repetition of discipline reinforces internal trust. Hill emphasized that self-respect is the silent currency of achievement. It stabilizes the mind, sustains persistence, and ensures coherence. Without it, external success is fleeting. With it, alignment becomes permanent, and external manifestations are consistent and inevitable. The mind respects its own authority, obeys its own laws, and acts in accordance with identity automatically. The invisible mental forces that govern reality are now fully harnessed. Alignment of thought, belief, desire, decision, persistence, imagination, and self-discipline orchestrates opportunity, circumstance, and result with predictability. Hill noted that external success appears coincidental to those untrained, but it is mechanical to the disciplined mind. The world responds to consistency, systems reward reliability, and obstacles are navigated with foresight and calm. External manifestation is inevitable when internal mastery is complete. Yet mastery demands vigilance. Hill warned that early success can deceive. Complacency, pride, distraction, and indulgence are subtle thieves of alignment. The disciplined mind continuously monitors itself, refines habits, reinforces faith, and revisits purpose. Internal order is maintained because identity depends on it. The mind that governs itself does not relax, it does not negotiate, it continuously enforces alignment because the cost of deviation is failure, stagnation, and erosion of potential. Success is not a destination, it is a state to be inhabited moment by moment. The final lesson at this stage is clarity. Success is not external. It is not an accumulation of wealth, recognition, or power. Success is the internal conquest of the mind. It is the alignment of thought, emotion, belief, and action with a definite purpose that is defended against fear, distraction, and doubt. External achievement is the reflection, the consequence, and the mirror of this internal sovereignty. Hill repeatedly demonstrated that those who master this internal law inhabit success continuously, regardless of circumstance. Those who do not struggle indefinitely, their efforts dissipated, their ambition frustrated, their potential unrealized. And so the mind now confronts the ultimate question: are you prepared to sustain this level of alignment continuously, without external validation, without drama, without immediate reward? Can you maintain discipline, persistence, imagination, faith, and emotional mastery as structural identity rather than fluctuating effort? Hill's philosophy is uncompromising. The mind that refuses to enforce its own law will inevitably experience struggle. The mind that obeys itself achieves destiny. Internal conquest is not optional, it is the prerequisite for every manifestation of lasting achievement. This is where trying ends and being begins. The mind that lives as success no longer negotiates. It does not plead with circumstance. It does not measure worth by external outcome. It embodies purpose, executes law, and enforces alignment continuously. External results, once inconsistent or unpredictable, now flow with inevitability, as predictable as the operation of a well-engineered mechanism. Hill's work demonstrates that living as success is not philosophy. It is practice. It is identity. It is the state in which every thought, every act, every emotion, and every decision serves the ultimate law of internal mastery. At this stage, the mind has undergone a transformation that is invisible to the untrained eye, but undeniable in its internal precision. Napoleon Hill emphasized that the laws of success are subtle, silent, and continuous. They operate beneath conscious awareness, structuring thought, emotion, and behavior into a coherent force that attracts opportunity and manifests reality. The disciplined mind, trained in persistence, faith, imagination, decision, and emotional mastery, now functions as a mechanism of inevitability. Each thought, each repetition, each act of obedience to internal law reinforces alignment. This alignment is the signal that governs invisible mental forces, orchestrating external reality with mechanical consistency. Success is no longer aspirational, it is structural, inevitable, and integral to identity. The invisible mental forces are not mystical, they are practical, psychological, and deeply precise. They operate according to patterns that can be studied, reinforced, and directed. Desire, once tentative, now functions as magnetic force, pulling circumstances, relationships, and resources into alignment with purpose. Faith amplifies this magnetic effect, converting abstract longing into actionable certainty. Persistence ensures continuity, allowing energy to accumulate rather than dissipate. Discipline enforces execution when motivation wanes. Imagination simulates solutions, problem rehearses obstacles, and anticipates complexity. Decision consolidates energy and focuses the mind. Fear, once a destabilizer, is now managed as a signal, not a command. Together, these forces form a coherent system that the external world cannot resist, a system that bends opportunity toward the person who has mastered it internally. Emotional mastery now becomes the defining marker of identity. The mind observes feelings, acknowledges their presence, and redirects energy according to internal law. Anxiety, doubt, frustration, and fatigue are not ignored. They are instruments to be managed, channeled, and utilized. Hill demonstrated that the emotional mind, when aligned with purpose and disciplined thought, amplifies action rather than hinders it. It provides energy for persistence, clarity for decision, and insight for problem solving. Those who lack emotional control allow impulses to dictate action, undermining alignment and sabotaging invisible mental forces. The disciplined mind, however, uses emotion strategically, converting every internal fluctuation into reinforcement of identity and purpose. At this stage, the individual no longer tries to act. Trying is effort accompanied by hesitation. Trying implies compromise, negotiation, and doubt. Hill's principle is unequivocal. Those who try remain reactive. Those who live as success are proactive. They act because inaction would violate identity. They persist because deviation would breach internal law. They make decisions not because they hope for external outcome, but because the law of alignment demands it. This is the moment where internal conquest transforms into inevitability. External reality is no longer a variable, it is a reflection of internal order. The mind's imagination operates at maximum efficiency. Hill stressed that imagination is the rehearsal chamber of the subconscious. Every scenario, challenge, and potential obstacle is visualized and rehearsed in advance. The subconscious cannot distinguish rehearsal from reality. Repeated simulation creates automatic responses when actual events arise. Problem solving becomes instinctive. Crisis is navigated calmly. Obstacles are reframed as steps rather than barriers. The mind that disciplines imagination trains the invisible forces to operate preemptively, anticipating solutions, shaping circumstances, and organizing reality around identity rather than chance. Decision at this stage is irreversible. Indecision, hesitation, and delay have been eradicated as internal habits. Every choice is informed by purpose, reinforced by faith, and executed with precision. Hill noted that the decisive mind commands more than circumstance. It commands the response of the subconscious, the alignment of invisible mental forces, and the momentum of action. Each decision reinforces identity, consolidates persistence, and further harmonizes the interaction between thought and circumstance. Those who waver continually dissipate energy and fragment internal law. Those who decide execute predictably and achieve inevitably. Persistence now flows seamlessly. It is no longer a struggle against fatigue, frustration, or delay. It has become a structural feature of identity. The mind that lives as success persists because cessation would contradict identity. Hill emphasized that long-term success is determined not by initial effort, but by the ability to persist when enthusiasm fades, when recognition is absent, when progress seems invisible. The disciplined mind continues to act because it has been trained structurally to do so, independent of circumstance, external feedback, or fluctuating emotion. This is the mechanism by which invisible mental forces are reinforced and external reality begins to align. Faith functions as the internal authority that converts repetition, imagination, and persistence into certainty. By now, the mind does not hope that results will appear. It acts as though results are inevitable. The subconscious is trained to accept this as law. Hill demonstrated that faith amplifies action, magnifies persistence, stabilizes emotion, and directs imagination. It transforms desire into mechanical execution. Where doubt would paralyze, faith energizes. Where fear would hesitate, faith commands. Faith is the invisible accelerator of the law of success, reinforcing identity continuously. The mind has now internalized self-respect and internal authority to an extraordinary degree. Every promise to oneself kept, every hesitation overcome, every fear confronted, every repetition of discipline reinforces trust in identity. Hill observed that self-respect is the silent, invisible foundation of achievement. Without it, external success is fragile. With it, results become predictable and sustainable. The mind that respects itself enforces alignment automatically. It obeys law without hesitation, acts without negotiation, and directs internal forces with precision. The invisible mental forces are now fully operational. Alignment of thought, desire, faith, decision, imagination, and discipline organizes opportunity, circumstance, and achievement into predictable patterns. External manifestation becomes inevitable. The world responds to consistency. Systems recognize reliability. Obstacles are anticipated and navigated with foresight and calm. External achievement appears as a natural extension of internal mastery, not as chance or luck. Those who do not understand these forces perceive success as coincidence. Those who master them know it is law, yet vigilance remains essential. Hill warned that complacency, pride, indulgence, and distraction are silent thieves. RNL alignment must be continuously reinforced. Habits must be observed, purpose revisited, faith reaffirmed, and persistence exercised. The disciplined mind does not relax even when external success is abundant. External recognition is irrelevant to internal law. Alignment is maintained because it defines identity. Deviation undermines identity and destabilizes invisible mental forces. Success is structural, not superficial. It is internal, not external. At this stage, the mind inhabits success. Trying is obsolete. Action flows automatically. Persistence continues effortlessly. Imagination, decision, faith, and discipline operate in constant synchronization. Fear, emotion, and distraction are observed and managed. Hill's principle is clear. The individual who lives as success internally commands the inevitable alignment of circumstance externally. The laws of success are no longer theoretical. They are enacted moment by moment through identity, habit, and internal authority. External manifestation is guaranteed when internal mastery is sustained. This stage demands reflection, clarity, and absolute commitment. The mind that reaches this level cannot afford negotiation. Internal order must be maintained continuously. Every action, thought, and decision is filtered through alignment with purpose. Hill demonstrated repeatedly that the law of success operates regardless of external resistance. Those who enforce identity experience predictable manifestation. Those who tolerate compromise experience stagnation. Internal mastery is absolute, and it governs destiny invisibly yet mechanically. Now you stand at the threshold. The internal work is complete. Desire, discipline, faith, persistence, imagination, decision, and emotional mastery are aligned. The invisible mental forces that govern destiny are trained, focused, and operating in synchrony. Yet there is one final test. the ultimate challenge that separates those who merely understand these principles from those who embody them fully, total responsibility. Napoleon Hill's greatest lesson is uncompromising. External success, lasting achievement, and personal power are not given. They are claimed. They are earned, not through luck or circumstance, but through deliberate internal mastery enforced without hesitation, without negotiation, without compromise. You have no one to blame, no one to excuse, no one to bail you out of the consequences of hesitation or indecision. Success, in its deepest sense, is yours to inhabit, or not at all. Living as success demands more an effort. It demands identity. Trying is no longer sufficient. To try implies uncertainty. To live as success is to act with absolute authority over mind, emotion, and behavior. It is to enforce alignment continuously, regardless of circumstance. It is to confront fear, doubt, and distraction repeatedly, with unwavering obedience to purpose. It is to persist relentlessly in the face of silence, rejection, and apparent delay. Hill taught that the individual who inhabits success internally attracts external alignment naturally. The moment you embody the principles as identity, the universe responds with opportunity, insight, and momentum. But if you hesitate, negotiate, or compromise, external manifestation falters. Trying without being is wasted effort. Being without execution is irrelevant. The law is absolute. Live as success, act as success, and persist as success, or remain invisible to your own potential. Every action you take from this point forward is either an expression of identity or a betrayal of it. Each thought, word, and choice communicates to your subconscious the law you obey. Hill emphasized that the subconscious is a faithful servant. It obeys instruction without question. Yet it cannot distinguish between wishful thinking and deliberate intention. Repetition trains it. Consistency commands it. Obedience aligns it. The mind that has mastered internal law directs these forces with precision. The mind that tolerates hesitation, compromise, or distraction Ursa's energy dilutes focus and invites stagnation. Success, therefore, is not optional. It is inevitable for those who enforce identity and impossible for those who do not. You have already confronted fear repeatedly. You have disciplined emotion, rehearsed challenge, executed decision, and enforced persistence. But now, the ultimate discipline is required, absolute, unwavering commitment to the self that inhabits success. Hill's philosophy is unflinching. The world will not validate you. Circumstance will not wait for you. Opportunities will not pause. Only the mind that acts decisively, consistently, and with absolute internal authority can command external alignment. Every hesitation is a choice against yourself. Every compromise is a surrender to chaos. Every delay is permission for doubt to erode identity. The stakes are absolute total mastery of mind or surrender to mediocrity. At this juncture, imagination becomes the final weapon. You are no longer rehearsing abstract outcomes or fleeting fantasies. You are visualizing your own unshakable execution. Every obstacle is anticipated. Every challenge is simulated with discipline. Every setback is internalized and neutralized before it occurs. The subconscious, having been trained through repeated alignment, begins to act automatically. Solutions are recognized before problems appear. Momentum accelerates invisibly, preparing circumstances, aligning resources, and orchestrating opportunity in response to your interna. Mastery. Hill demonstrated repeatedly that those who master imagination with purpose appear almost prescient, responding to reality with effortless precision because the internal order of thought precedes and shapes every external event. Decision now is no longer simply a tool, it is the law by which life itself is governed. Indecision is the enemy of alignment. Hesitation is a thief of momentum. Every choice executed reinforces identity, strengthens alignment, and directs the invisible forces that shape destiny. Hill observed that the decisive mind acts as a command center for all internal and external activity. Each action, executed with clarity, multiplies momentum, reinforces faith, and consolidates persistence. Each moment of hesitation, by contrast, fractures internal cohesion and delays manifestation. To inhabit success fully, decision must be instantaneous, absolute, and non-negotiable. Persistence by now is effortless because it has been internalized as identity. You act because inaction is incompatible with who you are. Hill made it clear that persistence without identity is unsustainable. It falters in the absence of external reinforcement. The persistent mind that acts as an expression of internal law becomes unstoppable. Fatigue, frustration, and delay are observed, managed, and converted into further reinforcement of identity. Success is no longer an external prize. It is the natural, mechanical consequence of consistent internal mastery. Persistence, NCE structural, commands opportunity, attracts resources, and dictates the rhythm of action. Faith is now irreducible certainty. The mind no longer hopes for outcome, it acts because outcome is inevitable. Hill emphasized that faith transforms repetition, imagination, and disciplined action into mechanical execution. The subconscious obeys with precision. Every fear confronted, every delay endured, every act of disciplined persistence reinforces faith. Faith magnifies action, neutralizes hesitation, and anchors identity against distraction or opposition. Without faith, persistence falters. Without faith, desire dissipates. With faith, the laws of success become inexorable. Self-respect, internal authority, and absolute obedience to purpose now define every moment. Hill noted that self-respect is the silent currency of achievement. It stabilizes the mind, enforces persistence, and sustains alignment without external validation. Each promise kept, each hesitation overcome, each fear confronted reinforces internal trust. The mind now enforces law automatically. Alignment is structural. External manifestation is predictable because internal mastery is complete. Opportunity, influence, and accomplishment are drawn naturally to the individual who inhabits this state continuously. And now the moment has arrived for the final test: action. Theory, alignment, discipline, imagination, persistence, faith, and internal mastery are meaningless without execution. Hill repeatedly observed that the individual who understands internal law but fails to act is indistinguishable from the individual who acts without understanding. Both remain invisible to their own potential. Action must now be decisive, immediate, and total. Hesitation is forbidden. Compromise is forbidden. Excuses are irrelevant. External circumstances will not wait. The only path is obedience to purpose through sustained execution, every thought, word, and deed reflecting the identity of success fully inhabited. You must now commit absolutely, not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, not when fear is absent. Now, in this moment, act decisively, enforce alignment, persist relentlessly, obey your internal law, live as success because the world only responds to those who embody it without negotiation. Hill's principle is absolute. External manifestation is a reflection of internal mastery. Obedience to internal law guarantees results. Failure to act guarantees nothing but delay, frustration, and wasted potential. So here is the truth you must embrace. With every fiber of thought, feeling, and intention, you are responsible for everything in your life. No one else can act in your stead. No circumstance, fortune, or favor can substitute for your internal mastery. Every hesitation, every compromise, every lapse of discipline is a choice against yourself. Success is not given. It is inhabited. It is enforced. It is executed. It is your identity, your command, your responsibility. To hesitate is to betray this truth. To act decisively is to claim it fully. Now decide, persist, act, align. Obey your internal law without compromise. Confront fear repeatedly. Reinforce desire. Exercise discipline continuously. Harness imagination strategically. Execute decisions with clarity and finality. Persist without pause. Trust yourself absolutely. Live as success now. Embody it. Inhabit it. Command it. Make no excuses. Delay no longer. The external world will mirror exactly what your mind has mastered internally. Success is yours if and only if you act with total responsibility, unwavering purpose, and relentless persistence, without hesitation, without negotiation, and without compromise. This is your moment. This is the law. This is Napoleon Hill's ultimate revelation. Internal mastery precedes external manifestation, and total responsibility is the gateway to destiny. Act now, live as success. Command your mind, claim your life. The moment to inhabit your identity is not in some distant future. It is here, it is now. Act, persist, obey, and live as the person who embodies success fully, unflinchingly, irrevocably. Every choice, every repetition, every action reinforces this law. The universe responds with precision to those who enforce it. Hesitate, and opportunity slips. Commit, and destiny aligns. No more trying, no more negotiation, no more excuses. Live as success, act as success, persist as success, command your mind, take total responsibility. This is the law, this is the principle, this is your life. Live it. Now,